Hey everyone, let's not make the same mistakes. Watch this short video on small business failure assessments brought to you by RIEC LLC. Today we'll be going over the background and purpose, key findings, conclusion, and reflections of this presentation. At the very end of the video will be a list of references for you to utilize. So 1/3 of American small businesses just have a tendency to die out after 2 years. A majority of these small business owners claim it's the result of lack of time and resources. Since 2017, the number of reported startups is nearly identical to the number of reported exits each year. So the purpose of this presentation is to provide prospective entrepreneurs and current small business owners consolidated information in order for them to determine what the average small business owner is and how they perform. In doing so, the hope is that small business owners learn what the average is, exceed the average, and become competitive and successful in today's market. So key findings in a nutshell. If you run into an American small business owner, it's likely that they're between the ages of 36 and 55 years old, with an education of some college or less, and they're male. They're likely to operate in either business services, retail, construction, residential and commercial, or food services. And small business owners claim they make $50,000 in incorporated businesses and $25,000 unincorporated on average. The top 3 methods of financing for this population group is cash, rollovers as business startups, or line of credit. So states with the highest populations of small businesses are California, Texas, Florida, and New York. California has 4 million small businesses with an economic growth rate of 3.5%. Their cost of living is estimated at $51,386. Texas is at 2.7 million small businesses with the economic growth rate of 3.7%. The cost of living is estimated at $48,494. Florida at 2.5 million, economic growth rate of 3.8%. Cost of living is $47,093. And New York at 2.2 million has an economic growth rate of 2.8% with a cost of living of $52,898. Now, key findings for the United States as a whole can be a little tricky because it seems that the U.S. Census Bureau and SBA do cross-reference 2017's data every so often. So the national economic growth rate is 3.4% with a total number of banks at roughly 5,787. With $6.1 million in loans underneath $100,000, that's a total of $90.8 billion. Incorporated business owner income, just a recap, is estimated at $50,000, and sole proprietorships and partnerships are racking in about 25. The rough number of startups and exits per quarter is 200,000. That's for both. And then the top 5 small business industries are healthcare and social assistance, accommodation and food services, retail, construction, and professional, scientific, and technical services. So just to drive the point home, your average small business owner is likely to be a male between 36 and 55 with some college or less, generating $50,000 or less, and either healthcare and social assistance, food services, retail, construction, or professional, scientific, and technical services. Because of the size of this population group, it is safe to assume that they make up a significant amount of the 1/3 failure rate for small businesses. Okay, so now that we've compiled all that useful information, we need to go ahead and look at what exactly is the problem and what's causing that 1/3 failure rate. I would love to, by all means, read your guys' inputs in the comments below on why you think or believe, based off the information given, businesses are failing. But from what I've seen and from what I can tell, it can pretty much be summed up into 2 different components. One is planning and the other one's management. And the first consideration is research. If we look at the population groups of some college or less, mainly males, and the dominant population group is above 40%. That's 35 to 55, and or something along those lines. And the second dominant population group is 55 and up. So if we combine the two, they're really driving over 80% of the small business market. And they're doing it within 5 different industries. So because the highest population group is within those 5 industries are males and are above the age of 35, the common trend here is research, and the lack of research results in a lot of these individuals going into oversaturated markets. Since the competition is so broad, they wind up evenly distributing the sales and the transactions to roughly $50,000 on average per small business owner. And then we hit prioritizing, and now this is where this gets tricky, because if you look at the states that have the most small businesses, Texas, Florida, New York, and California, you realize that their cost of living is either slightly below or slightly above the amount of income they're generating. And that's a problem, because it now means that our 35 and up population group that's driving 80% of the small businesses within the United States is barely getting by. Financing, the primary is cash, and it's going to always be cash. And then the second and third options require the bank, and just like what we've identified earlier, there are a lot of loans out there for $100,000 or less. So between borrowing from the bank and between funding out of pocket, options are limited within this group. Now, customer behavior. It's funny because when you look at the time frames that these people grew up, the dominant, the primary and the secondary groups of small business owners, they have a tendency to misalign their views and their beliefs with that of their customers. And you see this now more than ever with especially some companies like a few years ago you had Aeropostale, which was dominating the retail clothing industry. And it's unfortunate, but a lot of those retail clothing industries are getting a run for their money because today's consumer, your parentheses millennials, they like convenience, they like accessibility, and they like technology. So as long as they know their measurements and as long as they're familiar with the clothing brands, they will purchase online just out of impulse versus go all the way to a store location and look at a limited product line. And then pricing is definitely another big one, because these groups will price things at the convenience of their business. It's not all of them, but definitely within the 1/3 failure rate. What you see is overpricing to match the expenses of the company, or underpricing under the assumption that people will purchase your product because it is cost efficient. Anybody knows at this point it depends on what you're selling, and it doesn't always have a good turnout. If I sold you a car for $1,000, your first thought is probably going to be, well, what's wrong with it? Versus if I took the same vehicle and I sold it for, it's used, let's say it's a couple 10, 15 years old, and I took the same vehicle and I sold it for $6,000 to $7,000, believe it or not, people are more than likely to be negotiable under these conditions, because they believe since the price is higher, the seller is confident in their product. There will be a whole separate discussion on pricing and so forth, but that's just something to think about. Defining the product value and determining the price convenient to your target population is key, and this is unfortunately something a lot of people mess up. And then last but not least, overgeneralization and overexpansion within the planning segment. you have to curtail your product to your consumers. You cannot say the entire United States is your consumer. It can be your consumer, but you have to appeal to their interests, beliefs, and ideals in order to generate traffic. And same thing with overexpansion. Here's the opposite end of the spectrum. One of them is targeting a market too wide. The other one is biting off more than you can chew. Overexpansion results in low quality work and performance. If you cannot manage and control the consumer demand in exchange with your output and productivity, you're going to implode as a business. The 1/3 failure group has a tendency to do all these. And it's not to say, oh, well, college is necessary or higher education is necessary for business ownership and management. But in terms of the planning segment, it assists. And since most of this population group is some college or less, they don't structure themselves accordingly. And that's why you run into issues with financing, issues with customer assessment and behavior, pricing, target markets, and so forth. So just as much as the entrepreneur or small business owner needs to assess their target audience, they need to assess themselves and identify their shortcomings and remediate their deficiencies, whether that be through higher learning or hiring people who have access to higher learning. It is not feasible to assume that you could tackle all these different components by yourself. And a solid employee base sets the foundation for sustainment and expansion in the long term. And finally, management. Now that we've talked about employees and the need for them, management can really be summarized as time management, task distribution, and communication skills. Whether it be you who looks inboard, and during the initial phases of a business, it's common for the business owner to look inboard at the efficiency and the process of either product development or the services that the company provides. But in the long term, as the business leader, you need to look outboard and focus more on the planning. And hiring quality employees enables efficient management skills to be incorporated in your business. You look outboard, your experts look inboard. That way, you have time efficiency, task delegation, and an information feed established throughout your business, from the individual level to the executive level. A quick list of references primarily comprised of government research, guidance financials assessments, and USA Today's assessments of modern economics. Whenever you get a chance, visit these websites and get more in depth on the topics that I've discussed in order to come to your own conclusions. All right, everyone, thank you for joining RIEC LLC, a small business consultation agency operating within the Pacific Northwest of the United States. Before you go, we ask that you subscribe, comment below, and like our Facebook page at facebook.com/RIEC2019. If you're interested in more quality and content like what you've seen today, but more in depth, we highly recommend you establish a membership with RIEC LLC. In order to do so, it's as simple as message RIEC2019@AOL.com for access to quarterly reports, newsletters, business articles, and entrepreneurial interviews. Also, call us at 360-731-0729 to book a telephone consultation appointment today. We look forward to working with you and your business. Have a great day.